Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
The Blue Jays have built themselves into a genuinely difficult situation, and honestly, it's the kind of problem most franchises would kill to have. Too much talent, not enough playing time, and legitimate questions about how you optimize a roster that's already loaded. Nathan Lukes started nearly every postseason game last year, and now he's projected to be a bench player. That alone tells you how crowded things have gotten, and we haven't even added Bo Bichette or Kyle Tucker to this equation yet. The immediate instinct for most people is to suggest trading Anthony Santander. From a pure roster construction standpoint, it makes perfect sense. He was clearly the weakest performer in 2025. He's got a hefty contract, and moving him would open up playing time for younger, more productive players. Except there's a massive problem with that logic, and it's something people aren't really thinking through when they casually suggest flipping Santander. Let's look at this from another team's perspective for a second, because that's where this whole idea falls apart. You're asking a franchise to take on a player who just posted -1 wins above replacement, an OPS of 565, only 6 home runs in 54 games, and spent most of the season injured. He'll be 31 years old next season, coming off the worst year of his career with 4 years and over $76 million remaining on his contract. What team is lining up to inherit that situation? Sure, Santander has a solid track record before last year. 4 straight seasons of playing over 150 games, consistent power production, durability that you could count on. But in baseball, the most recent performance carries disproportionate weight in trade negotiations. Teams don't evaluate players based on what they did 3 years ago. They evaluate based on trajectory, current value, and risk assessment. Right now, Santander represents significant risk with unclear upside. The financial piece makes this even more complicated. Toronto would almost certainly need to eat a substantial portion of that contract to make any trade work. If you're already paying a significant chunk of his salary while he plays somewhere else, what exactly are you gaining? You're not clearing payroll flexibility, you're not getting back meaningful prospects because his value is tanked, and you're potentially giving up on a bounce-back candidate who could still contribute. Think about it from Toronto's position. They made a massive financial investment in Santander. If they can't get reasonable value in return, and they're stuck paying most of his contract anyway, why not just keep him and see if he bounces back? This is baseball. Injury-riddled seasons happen. Bo Bichette had a terrible injury-plagued 2024, then came back healthy in 2025 and reminded everyone why he's valuable. It's not guaranteed Santander does the same, but it's also not impossible. The real issue is that Toronto finds itself in a roster crunch that trading Santander doesn't actually solve in a meaningful way. Even if you move him, you've still got log jams at multiple positions. Which brings us to the bigger question. If the Blue Jays add Kyle Tucker or Bo Bichette, who actually loses playing time, and does it make sense to trade that person? The Bichette fit feels increasingly awkward the more you examine it. Kazuma Okamoto is going to play third base almost every day. You've got Ernie Clement, who broke out last year and is under team control. You've got Addison Barger and Davis Schneider, both providing flexibility and production. Where exactly does Bichette fit without creating more problems than he solves? The infield feels complete right now, and forcing another piece into that puzzle just to say you added a big name doesn't make strategic sense. Kyle Tucker, on the other hand, addresses a clearer need with less defensive gymnastics required. When you project the roster into 2027, George Springer's contract expires, the DH spot potentially opens up, and Dalton Varsho might test free agency. Suddenly, your outfield could look drastically different. If you don't add Tucker now, you're looking at Addison Barger, Anthony Santander, and Miles Straw as your projected outfield. That's not exactly inspiring for a team trying to compete for championships. Tucker gives you elite production in right field for the next several years, assuming you can sign him long term. He doesn't require moving pieces around defensively. He provides right-handed power to balance the lineup, and he fits the competitive window Toronto is operating in right now. The fit is cleaner, the need is clearer, and the long-term roster construction makes more sense. But here's where it gets really interesting. If Toronto doesn't trade Santander, and they add Tucker, who gets moved to clear roster space, The name that keeps coming up is Nathan Lukes, and that feels almost cruel given what he contributed last postseason. But from a pure asset management perspective, Lukes has trade value right now because he just proved he can perform in high leverage situations. Teams would be interested. The question is whether Toronto values the depth more than whatever return they'd get. Davis Schneider isn't going anywhere because of his platoon value against left-handed pitching and his positional versatility. Miles Straw brings defensive excellence and clubhouse presence that matters more than people realize. Addison Barger represents left-handed power and multi-position flexibility that contending teams covet. So if you're making a trade to clear space, Lukes is really the only name that makes sense, and even that feels wrong given his contributions. Which is why the most likely scenario might be that Toronto doesn't trade anybody. They ride with a crowded roster in 2026, accept that some productive players will have reduced roles, and trust that injuries and rest days will create enough playing time to keep everyone engaged. It's not elegant, but it might be the most realistic approach. People forget that roster depth isn't a luxury during a championship run. It's a necessity. Last year, Lukes only got playing time because Santander got hurt. This year, someone else will get hurt, someone will slump, and suddenly that depth becomes critical rather than problematic. If you trade away productive bench players to create a cleaner roster hierarchy, you're one injury away from exposing serious weaknesses. The other factor people aren't considering is that this is the window. You've got George Springer for one more year. Kevin Gausman is still elite. Dalton Varsho is still under team control. This isn't the time to be cutting corners or trading depth to make the roster aesthetically cleaner. This is the time to overwhelm opponents with options, to have so much talent that other teams can't exploit any weaknesses. So here's my read on how this plays out. Toronto adds Kyle Tucker, not Bo Bichette. They keep Anthony Santander and hope he bounces back to even 75% of what he was before the injury. They accept that Nathan Lukes, despite his postseason heroics, will have a reduced role during the regular season but will still contribute. They ride with a crowded roster, banking on the fact that over 162 games plus playoffs, everyone will get opportunities. It's not the clean, simple solution that fans want. It doesn't make for easy depth chart graphics or clear role definitions, but it might be the smartest approach for a team that believes their championship window is right now. You don't trade productive players just to create organizational clarity when you're trying to win a World Series. You maximize talent, accept some uncomfortable roster decisions, and trust that the best players will rise to the biggest moments. If Santander bounces back and hits 30 home runs, everyone forgets about 2025. If Lukes accepts a bench role and delivers again in October, the reduced regular season playing time won't matter. If Tucker provides exactly the kind of consistent production Toronto needs, the roster crunch becomes a footnote rather than a crisis. The path isn't pretty, but the destination could be exactly where this franchise wants to go. Drop your thoughts on whether they should trade Lukes or ride with the depth.